and we've been working for 50 years at the nexus of science and policy. And for more than 4 decades, we've worked in Florida, on Florida waters, and on issues relating to Florida's manatees, sea turtles, seabirds, things that us Floridians hold so dear. And as a part of our science-driven mission, we often engage in blue ribbon research on things like plastics and debris that really are facing our ocean planet. And we've conducted this study to try to get a better picture of how marine wildlife, is being impacted by marine debris, by plastics. And we've done that globally, but we've also really focused in on Florida. Florida is home to such iconic wildlife like manatees, like sea turtles, like seabirds, and trying to understand how plastics are ingested by these animals and how it can affect them really will help us as we cultivate policy solutions that can help protect those animals in the long run. So as we undertook to examine the necropsies of animals that have been collected in Florida, like manatees, we found that there are disproportionate amounts of plastic impacts in their bodies. Manatees, for example, we've done analysis of thousands of manatee necropsies, and we found that it takes only a baseball's worth of plastic to kill a manatee. That's a comparatively small amount of plastic if you think about the size of a manatee. A manatee can weigh 1,000 pounds, so they can be killed by something that's relatively, insignificant to them. But it's a testament to the amount of plastic that's showing up in our waterways, and that it does accumulate in these animals. A hatchling sea turtle can be killed by something as small as a golf ball size of plastic. So these plastics really are nefarious. In a time where we're focusing on the health of Florida's waterways, when we're talking about development of Florida's coasts, we really need to be talking about the impact that we on land are having on our animals, on our manatees, on our sea turtles, and our plastic impacts are really significant and something that we as Ocean Conservancy want to do something about. So we're taking a study like this and we're going all the way to Capitol Hill. We're working in Washington, D.C. to develop policy outcomes. We're also working in Tallahassee to work with our elected officials at the state level to try to address single-use plastic items, to try to address microplastics, and to try to spread awareness and raise the issue of plastics as a major concern for our Floridian wildlife. I'm a 6th-generation Floridian, so this kind of work is really in my blood. It's something that I care a tremendous amount about, and I think that there's a lot of work that needs to be done in order to actually protect our marine wildlife from the threat of plastic. But I'm extremely optimistic that we as Floridians and the people who are coming to Florida to love the Sunshine State are going to do every single thing they can to protect our marine wildlife from the threat of plastics.
Are we talking about an accumulation of plastics when you say a baseball, or are we choking on a baseball because I swallowed one?
Well, we're talking about an accumulation. We're talking about bits of plastic that are ingested. A manatee needs to eat 100 pounds of seagrass every day in order to survive. And as it's chewing on the seagrass, it's also picking up debris like plastic bags or other single-use plastic items. And that plastic does accumulate. And ultimately, when it gets to be that size of a baseball, it's enough to kill a manatee.
And it does that? It accumulates in a way that it's not spit out the body?
Some can pass. Some of the plastic can pass through the body, but we also do see plastic accumulating and totally occluding the guts of marine mammals, and that's true in creatures like sperm whales, not just manatees. Larger marine mammals can be impacted in their digestive tracts by accumulation of plastics.
For the manatees, what sort of time frame are we talking about? Is it over a lifetime of years that accumulates, or?
It can accumulate over a lifetime, yes. I mean, young manatees will accumulate plastics as soon as they start eating seagrass, as soon as they're weaned from their mothers. And that plastic can accumulate, and again, some does pass, but some does stay in the gut.
And is it a blockage, or is it also toxicity? What is it about the plastic that is dangerous for these?
Well, just like we're trying to understand the impacts of plastics on the human system, where we do know that there are microplastics that can pass through the blood-brain barrier in babies, for example, we still don't fully understand the impacts on the human system, and likewise, we don't fully understand the toxicity impacts on manatees. We certainly know that there are blockages. We can probably suspect that there are toxicity impacts, but we're still waiting for the science to come through on that.
How many necropsies did you perform or study that led you to these conclusions?
For manatees, over 10,000.
And then in looking at those and looking at, again, toxicity versus something that they would choke on, was there anything about the numbers that was surprising?
Well, I think that the size of the smallest amount of plastic it takes to impact an animal is shocking. I think that it doesn't take much to impact the health of an animal, and I think that that's what we're taking away from the study as being so shocking. You often think something so big as a manatee or as a sperm whale might need something really significant, really large for them to eat something the size of a car or something in order to be impacted. But no, it's actually something relatively small that can kill them.
No, I was just going to say, and this may have been where you were going. Of the 10,000 necropsies, I mean, what was the percentage that were impacted, roughly?
I'd have to look at the study, which we have the stats for you. But I don't know, Rachel, if you have the number.
66% are species that can be found in Florida and Gulf waters. The database drew from 10,412 necropsies.
Yeah, so, and candidly, I'm not a scientist. I'm a lawyer. I work on the policy side, okay? And so I work with our scientists to help develop the policy outcomes that we want to see in Tallahassee and in Washington, D.C. So I'm a professional advocate. I'm a lobbyist. But I work so closely with these scientists who do the science so that we can come up with those statistics that are going to be really convincing, not just to the public, but to our legislators.
Along those lines, are we seeing a backslide when it comes to policy? Because I thought for a while there, I couldn't go into St. Pete and not get a paper straw, right? Or whatever. In certain communities, certain steps have been taken in sympathy with these studies as they go along. But recently, if I'm not mistaken, there's actually been a backslide in places like Tallahassee and D.C. where they've said, you know what, you drink through what you want, you use what you want.
There has been a backslide in protections on plastics in Florida, and we as Ocean Conservancy are working as hard as we can to bring some of those protections back and to create new protections. One of the biggest problems is Tallahassee has preempted local governments from regulating single-use plastic items. That means there's a ban on bans. We would like to see the state act if they're going to ban local governments from regulating plastics. We would love to see the state of Florida act in their place and address these single-use items that we run the International Coastal Cleanup every year, and we know that single-use plastic items are the number one items found on Florida beaches during the International Coastal Cleanup. We're talking about bottle caps, we're talking about plastic bags, we're talking about cigarette butts, which is actually plastic. And we think that the state of Florida is well equipped to address these plastic items. And, with a calculator like this, we can see that the plastics are accumulating and having really negative impacts on our iconic Floridian wildlife. I don't think Tallahassee wants to see manatees dying from plastic ingestion, and I think our study shows to them that manatees are dying from plastic ingestion, and that we as Floridians want to see something done about it.
What can people do to help out the marine life?
Well, people can raise the alarm to their legislators. I think that's a really significant thing they can do. They can take a study like ours and use it as one of the tools in the toolkit when it comes to the marine advocacy that we as Floridians need to be doing. We're seeing people speak out against, the prospect of a cruise terminal being put outside the Skyway here. Or we're seeing people speak out against, harmful algal blooms in the Indian River Lagoon or in Biscayne Bay. I think being equipped to address plastic pollution and marine debris as a first level issue for marine conservation in Florida, so that awareness of the problem is really important. But then advocating for that problem is significant too, by talking to your elected officials, by talking to your local governments. Of course, there's the issue of personal responsibility and personal action. I think we as Floridians need to be moving away from single-use plastic items. Stop using single-use plastic straws. Bring your own bags to the store. Recycle when you can, and advocate for strong recycling programs at the local government level. These are all things that you can do personally, and I think that people should be doing as a matter of course.
Based on the study, what is the legislation you'd like to see? What is the solution in your mind that gets it from where we're at now to a healthy environment?
Well, the holy grail for addressing plastic pollution in Florida would be to implement circularity, meaning beyond merely recycling plastic items, developing systems for governments to keep marine debris out of the oceans before it ever gets a chance to get into the ocean. So you're talking about reducing, reusing, recycling, but you're also talking about closing the leaky loops that exist in our waste management systems. And I think that, you know, we're well equipped as smart Floridians to plug those holes and fill those gaps where we know trash is leaking out from our waste collection systems and getting into our waterways. So that kind of closing the loop on circularity for marine debris is really important. But I also think that we could be doing things like simple things like addressing these single-use plastics bans. Like, it's very obvious to me that a ban on plastic bags is a net positive for the environment. I don't like seeing plastic bags in the ocean. We've banned other similar items. We banned balloon releases, right? To me, a plastic bag is as asinine as a balloon release. Bring your own bag to the store, or bring a cardboard box, or whatever the case may be. So addressing those kinds of single-use items at the legislative level, I think, will go a long way as well.
I was on the phone with like Clearwater Aquarium when I was driving down here, and they were talking about it goes beyond, because you mentioned manatees, sperm whales, but it goes as little as sea turtles seeing a bag and thinking it's a jellyfish or, you know, something like that. Are those also in the study that you guys kind of did and the research numbers that you've seen?
Yes, we studied lots of different types of marine wildlife, sea turtles, seabirds, manatees in particular for the Florida-focused portion, and we definitely saw significant impacts on sea turtles. Floridians love sea turtles. They nest on our beaches, they grow up here, they're hatched here, right? And a tiny portion of plastic can really impact the life of a sea turtle. Even sea turtles in the nest are impacted by plastics in the sand. An accumulation of microplastics in the sand can actually change the temperature of the sand around a nest, and sea turtles are sexed according to the temperature of the sand. So if you have extra hot sand because too much plastic is creating a solar sink there, it's going to create nests where all of the sea turtles are the same sex, meaning that they don't have the same opportunity to reproduce over time. So plastics are affecting not just the health of animals that ingest them, but it's also impacting their whole reproductive cycle potentially. And that's something that I think we really want to raise people's awareness on. You know, it's not just, you know, ugly, but it's something that's really hurting our wildlife.